So in the last tutorial, I went over the basics of how you can read in external XML using ActionScript 3. Well, in this tutorial, we're going to get a little more advanced, and I'm going to show you how to deal with XML files that use custom namespaces. Now, this is a problem that you often run into, and it's not the easiest thing to know how to deal with that type of XML. So what we're going to build is a simple Cooler application. So Cooler is a utility made by Adobe, or it's actually a site which allows people to create their own color schemes and share them with people. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out to the Cooler API and get the RSS feed, and then we're simply going to draw the theme here out on the stage, the colors, and then when the user clicks on the stage, it's going to go to the next theme. So this will get pretty advanced coding wise. So you definitely need to have watched the XML basics tutorial before doing this one. So I've created a new FLA in the desktop called cooler.fla. I've made it 800 by 200, and actually let me change this to, should actually be 1000. So Cooler themes have 5 colors associated with them. So we're going to be drawing 5 squares here on the stage, each 200 by 200 with those colors. And I've set it at 30 frames per second. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Actions panel, and you can see I've already added just the raw code in order to read in this RSS feed. So again, this is exactly what we did in the last tutorial. Created my XML object. Here I'm just getting the all of the items in that RSS feed and putting them in this IL XML list variable, and then I'm just iterating through that list and just tracing out the items. And then down here is the actual load method call with the call to the Cooler API. So there are many different parameters you can send to the Cooler API, and you should go to labs.adobe.com if you want to learn more. So in this example, I'm just going to be getting the highest rated color schemes, and I'm going to have it return 20 of them in the RSS feed. So I'm going to hit Control Enter, and as soon as it retrieves that feed, here we go in the output panel, and it's output all of the different items. So one thing to do if you're working with complicated XML is to actually view it in an XML editor or some type of editor. So I'm going to open up Dreamweaver, where I've actually just retrieved the raw RSS that gets returned just using Firefox. And then inside of Dreamweaver here, I can better visualize it. So here we have the standard RSS structure, RSS tag, then the channel tag, then we have some information, kind of metadata about the actual RSS feed, and then we have the start of our items. So up until this point, everything looks like a normal RSS feed. Well, here we have title, link, description, which contains some HTML. But when we get down here, we can see this tag that looks a little funny because it's got a colon in it, and this is a Cooler : theme item. And inside of this contains all the nitty-gritty details about this theme, including the 5 swatches, which we can see here. So Cooler swatch, and then here is the hex color. So we need to actually get at these values in order to draw those colors out to the stage. So how do we actually deal with tags that have namespaces applied to them like this? And that's what I'm going to show you in this movie. So the first thing we need to do if we're dealing with a custom namespace is we need to create a new namespace object here in ActionScript. So I'm going to come under my XML object. I'm just going to call the namespace Cooler. I'm going to data type it to namespace. It's equal to new namespace. Now to the constructor, we need to pass in the URL of where that namespace is defined, essentially. So if we go to the top of our RSS, we can see that Cooler namespace in the XML is defined right here. So XML-NS, which just stands for XML namespace, cooler is equal to, and then here's our URL. So we need to get this URL and pass it to the namespace constructor. So this is vital in order to get that to work. So I'm going to pass that in and close it. So now we have our namespace set up here inside of ActionScript. Okay, so now we can come here, we can remove the trace because we obviously don't need to be tracing out the items. So what we want to do is we want to iterate through all the items in the RSS feed, which are of course stored here in this IL variable. And we want to extract the 5 hex colors for each theme. And we want to put all of them into an array so that we can then one at a time display those themes on the stage. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, before I get into the actual parsing of the RSS, I'm going to go ahead and create an array, and I'm just going to call it KA for cooler array. And again, this is going to hold all of our themes. It's equal to new array. And another variable that we're going to need a little bit later is just a variable that will hold what theme is currently displayed on the stage, because when the user clicks it, we want to go to the next one, and we need a variable that's just going to keep track of which one is currently selected. And I'm going to call it CC for current color, and this is just going to be a simple integer. And the first one that's going to be displayed is the first one in the array, which is obviously going to be an index of 0. So we'll look at how we're going to be using these in a few minutes. Okay, so now we want to iterate through the items. So what I want to do is I want to first, actually let's go back to Dreamweaver. So one of the handy things about looking at XML here in Dreamweaver is it's very easy to visualize the path to these different things. So if I click on Cooler Theme Item, you can see down at the bottom here, we see the path that I need to take in order to get to that. So obviously RSS is the root, channel, item, then Cooler Theme Item. And inside of the Cooler Theme Item, we have a tag called Cooler Theme Swatches. Now inside of this actually contains 5 swatch tags. Now this is a swatch block essentially for each color in the theme. And then inside of that, we now have our hex color. Now this is the value we're really interested in, because this is what's going to allow us to draw that color inside of Flash. So we can see the path that we're going to need to take here. So go into Theme Item, go into Theme Swatches, and then inside of that, go to the individual swatch tags and get the swatch hex color. So you can see this gets pretty complicated, but once you get used to kind of traversing XML like this, it'll become second nature. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable. So every time, so this is going to happen for every item inside of that RSS feed, essentially every theme. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm just going to call it SL, and I'm going to data type it to XML. So what we want to do here is to get the theme swatches XML block, which contains the individual swatches, and assign it to this SL variable. So how do we get to that? So first we go to the item list, which is here, which contains all of our items. Then we go to cooler, which is the namespace, and we actually want to now go to that theme item tag. So you would think that we would write it like this, because this is exactly how it is inside of the XML. Well, unfortunately, a colon inside of ActionScript means something totally different. So we actually give it 2 colons in order to tell ActionScript that this is actually a namespace preceding this. Okay, so now we're actually at the theme item. Now we just need to get to the theme swatches array, which contains the 5 individual swatches. So to do that, we say dot, and then we go to cooler. Again, it's a namespace, and it is theme swatches. Now we want to go to whatever index I is currently representing. So again, every time we go through here, first time it will be getting us to the first theme, and it's going to be assigning those theme swatches to this SL variable. Okay, so now we have that swatches array. It's essentially an array, but a block of XML. Now what we want to do is we want to create an object that's going to hold each of those 5 color values. And then we're going to push that object onto our array that we created up here. So we're just going to create a simple object. I'm going to call it CO for color object. It's equal to new object. And now we're just going to start creating the properties. So I'm going to create 5 properties, 1 for each color swatch. So co.c1 for color 1. Now we need to get to that swatch hex color tag, and we want to get the text that's inside of that tag because that actually has our color value. So much like we did before, so now I'm going to say SL because that currently contains the 5 swatches for whatever theme we're currently on in this for loop. So it's going to be SL.cooler. Oops, and that should be colons. So we have 2 colons now. And inside, the next thing we need to get to is actually get to the swatch tag. So if we go back to Dreamweaver, you can see here's our theme swatches. We need to get to the swatch tag and then to the swatch hex color tag and then get the text inside. Okay, so here we are at the swatch tag. Now we just need to go 1 level deeper to get to the swatch hex color. So that's going to be cooler and swatch hex color. Okay, so now we need to get the text that's inside of that tag because obviously we don't want the XML tag as well. And if you remember from the last tutorial, we do that by calling the text method, and that will return just the text that's inside of there. But now remember, there are 5 swatches inside of this SL variable. So using array syntax, we want to get to just the first color here, which is going to be assigned to the C1 property. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this, and there's 5 colors inside of here. So there's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And now it's just a matter of changing the numbers. So C2, C3, C4, C5. And again here, this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's just quickly go over this because I know this is, probably looking confusing to a lot of people. But essentially, we're iterating through all the items inside of the RSS feed. So each item contains one theme. So here we're actually getting to the theme swatches for whatever the index is currently in the for loop and assigning it to this SL variable. Now we're creating an object which is going to contain a property for each of the colors. And I just called that object CO, and we're creating properties C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, and we're retrieving the actual hex color, which is the text inside of that swatch hex color tag, and assigning it to that property. The last thing we need to do is we now want to push this object onto this array that I created up here. So and this would be a really good example of when you would use classes instead of, holding things in arrays like I'm doing here. But, for an example like this, there's no need to go into object-oriented programming land. So I'm just simply going to push that object onto the array. So as it goes through this for loop, it's going to do that for every theme. So since I down here in the RSS, I requested 20 results, I'm now going to have 20 objects inside of this array, and each of those objects has 5 properties, each with the individual swatch colors. Okay, so now I have all of that information in the array. That's great. But now I actually need to draw the first theme onto the stage, and that's what we're going to do now. So after this for loop is finished, what I want to do is I want to call a function that we're going to write next, and I'm going to call it draw colors. And to that function, what I want to send is which color object do I want to draw. So I want to go to the first item in that KA array. Sorry, I just had to take a drink there. So this is a pretty long one. But again, it's showing you how to deal with some complicated RSS XML data. So it's really beneficial to know how to do this. Okay, so now I'm going to create that function. So again, I called it draw colors, and I'm sending one parameter to this function, and it's of type object. I'm just going to call it C for color. We're not returning anything. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to draw the 5 color swatches onto the stage. So to do that, we're going to use the drawing API. And again, this will be a good tutorial also to show you how to do that. But essentially, all display objects have a property called graphics, which is the property that you do the drawing with. So I'm going to say graphics, and then I'm going to call the begin fill method. And here is where we actually pass it what color do we want to fill when we're actually drawing. So now I want to get to the first property on that object and use that as the color. So remember though that hexadecimal color values inside of Flash need to be preceded by 0x, and obviously that wasn't inside of the RSS feed, so we're going to need to do that ourselves. So I'm going to create a string with the 0x, and then I'm going to add onto that first property value, which is c.c1. So you would think that this would work because these two values, once they're added together, are going to equal a valid hexadecimal string. But the begin fill method is expecting an integer or a number, because remember, hexadecimals are numbers, they're not strings. So we need to actually turn this little operation we did right here into a number. And the easiest way to do that is to use the parse int global function, and this function essentially allows you to send in a string, and it will parse it and turn it into an actual number value. So now with this, it's actually going to have a valid hexadecimal number to pass into that begin fill method. Okay, so now we have basically our pen set up to draw the correct color. Now we just need to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to say graphics.drawRect, which is the function or the method that allows you to draw a rectangle. And the first two parameters are the starting position, so it's going to be 0, 0, and then the width and height, so it's going to be 200 by 200. Now I'm going to test it, and you can see it went out and got the RSS, and now we've successfully drawn that first color swatch of that first theme. Well, now it's pretty easy because it's just a matter of copy and paste. So I'm going to come, there's a second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, and obviously we're changing the fill color each time to match the swatch. So this is C2, C3, C4, C5, and now all we have to do is to change the start position. It's always going to start at the top, so all we need to do is change the X position. So this one's going to start at 200, 400, 600, and 800. So let's test it. And there we go. Look at that. Beautiful. So now it's parsed it. It's gotten the first theme. I've called this draw color function. And using the drawing API, I've gone ahead and drawn those 5 swatches. Okay, so the last piece of the application, just so it allows users to be able to cycle through them, is when the stage is clicked, we want to draw the next theme inside of that array. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add an event listener to the stage. So stage.add event listener, and it's mouse event dot click, and then I'm going to have it call a function called change color. So again, anytime the stage is clicked, it's going to call this change color function. So I'm going to come at the bottom here, I'm going to come under the draw colors function, and we can create that change color function. So function change color. It's not returning anything. Okay, so now here's where we use this CC variable that we created, which basically just holds the number or index of the currently displayed color. So whenever we click the stage, we want to go to the next theme. So what we're going to do is, first thing we're going to do is check to see if CC is at the end of our theme array. If it is, we're going to make it loop and go back to the first one. So the way we do that is we do an if statement. So if CC is equal to ka.length, which returns the total number of themes, which we know is 20. We could hard code it, but this is a better way to do it. But since arrays actually start with 0, we want to subtract 1 here. So if CC is equal to the length of the array minus 1, then we want to set CC back to 0. If that's not the case, we just want to increment CC. And then the last step here is we want to call this draw colors function, and we want to pass the correct object from the KA array. So we just say KA, or actually we need to call the function. Then we pass in KA, and we use CC as the index, which is going to give us the next theme in the list. So let's test it. Now we can see the first theme, and when I click, let's see, change color. Oh, okay, I know what I did wrong there. So again, this is ActionScript 3 kind of keeping me straight. So the reason that failed is because this is an event, and to this change color it sends an event object, which I don't have here. So it actually sends mouse event, but event will be fine in this situation. So now I can test it. See our first swatch, and when I click, we're now going to the second item in the KA array, pulling out the individual hex colors and populating the stage. And now I can simply click to view the most popular themes on Cooler. So again, this was kind of a neat application. The biggest takeaway from this is definitely the namespace usage. So if you see XML or RSS with those custom namespaces, you need to define that namespace here in ActionScript, and then you use it by using this double colon syntax. Apart from that, it's exactly the same with working with regular XML without namespaces. You just first need to define the namespace and then use this syntax to get to the actual tags. So again, this is the Advanced XML tutorial, and it also showed you things like the drawing API and also how to connect to the Cooler API. So I hope you enjoyed it.